Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
At this point in our program, we go around the room and introduce ourselves. Your first and or last name, whatever you're comfortable with. Start with me. I'm David.
I'm Cage.
My name is Ray Dyer.
My name's Michael.
I'm Jerry.
I'm Richard.
I'm Scott.
I'm Rick.
I'm Mark. I'm Shantan Pupa.
Jerry.
I'm Bob.
Rose.
I'm Brian. I'm Tom Bruein.
I'm Nathan.
James.
Peter. Jim Stewart.
Patrick. I'm Dave Luncato.
I'm Roy.
George.
I'm James Clark.
Rich.
My name is Michael.
My name is Jay. My name is Manuel.
My name is Roger.
My name is Eric.
I'm Len.
I'm Jim.
Background.
Anthony.
Joshua. My name is Oswaldo.
Ed.
I'm Mark.
I'm Joe Castrovisi.
Jay Davidson.
Paul Winternitz.
Thank you. Welcome again. Our speaker this morning, our guest speaker, is Tom Moon, who has been with us before. We're happy to welcome him back. Tom has been a practitioner of Vipassana meditation for 15 years, and his spiritual home is the Spirit Rock Meditation Center. He's a psychotherapist in San Francisco and works primarily with gay men. His chief professional commitment is to exploring the interface between Buddhist practice and psychotherapy practice. Perfect for us. His topic this morning, I believe, is anxiety.
Morning. Well, last time I was here, I guess it was about a year ago. I haven't been here in ages. I talked about, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I need to speak up. I mumble sometimes, just yell or something. Last time I was here, I talked about depression and, meditative and spiritual practices for responding to depression. And this time I wanted to talk about another afflictive emotion, namely anxiety, partly because working with anxiety is kind of a growing edge for me. I'm still trying to figure out how to do it. Still learning about how to do it. My personal experience with it and professional experience with it is that it's been a little easier to work with clients who are depressed with practice and teach mindfulness than it is to work with anxiety. People don't do it, they have trouble doing it, and there seem to be a couple of reasons for this. And by the way, not everyone finds that to be true. I mean, this is just my experience. Some people find it harder when they're depressed to meditate. But my experience has been anxiety is more difficult. And one of the reasons seems to be that anxiety is a really highly energizing emotion. It's your threat system that's been stimulated, the amygdala. There's two of them in here. The alarm goes off and the heart rate goes up and adrenaline is released and cortisol, the stress hormone, which makes you feel awful, gets released. And the whole point of it is to impel you to fight, flight, or freeze. And the freeze part isn't relaxed. It's, it's like that, And it's a very old system we have in our brains. There have been brains on Earth for about 600 million years. And the stress, anxiety system, the threat response and detection system, developed very early on. So what we have this system in our brains back in what's called the lizard brain. We have 4 brains in us. We have the reptilian, paleo-mammalian, neo-mammalian, and human brains. One of the reasons it's so hard to be human, I think, is that what we have in us is a lizard, a squirrel, a monkey, and just a little human up here, and we're trying to manage it. It's all tied together, So, we're kind of challenged, and the threat that, we know what it feels like to be a lizard in the desert seeing a snake. When it does it, it goes like that. We know what that feels like inside. It's a very powerful, intense response system. And to try to sit and meditate through that is, for most people, pretty challenging. So that's one reason, I think, that it's difficult. But it's important to try to respond to anxiety because it's a huge issue in our culture. It's estimated that about 18% of the population has some form of, every year, some form of diagnosable anxiety disorder. And even the people who don't in our culture are still really dealing with it. We seem to me to be a really stressed out culture and getting worse all the time. Is that right? We're angry, irritable, scared, exhausted. That's, and I think it's getting worse in this recession. So it's important to have some way of responding to anxiety, and it seemed like a good idea to teach mindfulness. You teach a calm abiding, and people just, don't stop responding to what's happening. But what I found is that when people are in panic states, for instance, or anxiety states, forget it. What you need then is some more active response, like aerobic exercise and yoga and hot bath and reassurance from other people. And some people need medications. And when you've done that, then if the anxiety level goes down, then maybe you can begin practicing mindfulness, and that can help. But I think another reason that I have had some difficulty with anxiety is that for a lot of people, there seems to be a misunderstanding of what mindfulness really is. And it comes from the fact that we use this word mind in English, which denotes the thinking process for most of us, And a lot of people conceive of mindfulness as a kind of dispassionate, even aloof, even cold state where you simply observe what's happening and you're not affected by pleasure or pain, neutral. You're just sort of watching it all. And when mindfulness is seen as that, it tends to foster a sense of separation between you and your experience. It actually, you could feel kind of isolated inside yourself. I don't know whether anyone's ever experienced this. Is this ring a bell for anybody? And kind of aloneness. And so the trouble is that anxiety is an alone state. When you're really anxious, there's an experience of feeling kind of all alone in a very hostile, threatening universe. That's the subjective feeling of anxiety. So to sort of dispassionately watch that from a distance, I think doesn't help too much. I do think this is a misunderstanding of what mindfulness actually means. In the Pali language, the word for mind and the word for heart are the same word, citta. They're not. They didn't separate them. So in mindfulness, we could also use the term heartfulness. And I think if we looked at practice as developing a kind of heartful response to our experience, then it begins to be able to respond to anxiety. I want to do a guided meditation here in a couple minutes. I found some practice. And once I started getting into all this stuff, I found that a lot of people were ahead of me, and I found some resources for lowering stress and anxiety that I think are effective, that lead to mindfulness, but don't just start with an attempt to do pure mindfulness. I want to talk about one of the challenges, though, in dealing with anxiety. One of the things that neuropsychology has been finding, have you read this book, by the way? Has anyone this Buddha's Brain? It's really interesting. I really strongly recommend it. And what I'm saying comes from a lot from this book. There is a negativity bias built right into the brain. In other words, the brain tends to favor negative experiences. It gives them more attention. It responds to them quickly than positive experiences. And there's a simple thought experiment to show why this was absolutely inevitable, why this had to be the case. So here's two mistakes. And ask yourself, which mistake is the most dangerous to make? First mistake, you're outside and you in the bushes, you think you see a tiger. You're on the Serengeti plain, you think you see a tiger. But you're wrong, and you run away, but you're wrong, there isn't a tiger. Second mistake, you're out on the Serengeti plain, you look in the bushes and you think, no, that's not a tiger, that's just shadows. But actually it is a tiger and it's about to pounce. So which mistake is the most dangerous? It's pretty obvious, right? The second one is the more dangerous mistake to make. If you are threatened by something and it isn't really a threat, then you're just feeling bad, but you're still alive and you can pass on your genes. If you underestimate a threat and it really turns out to be the tiger, then you might get killed and won't pass on your genes. In a sense, that what this says really is that evolution doesn't care. Well, it doesn't care about anything. But we have to use theological language to talk about this just to save time. It doesn't care about whether you're happy, peaceful, and contented or not. It cares that you survive. And survival is what it's about. So we have a bias toward paying attention to negative experiences. Positive ones take much longer to even register, 5 to 10 to 20 to 30 seconds before we even begin to notice positive experiences. A threat, split second, and the threat system is activated. So there are some important consequences. Here's a consequence. You go to a party, and everyone at the party is very friendly and fun and likes you, but one person is snide and contemptuous. Who do you go home thinking about? And it isn't just you. It's not because you're crazy. People tell me in therapy, they tell me this all the time. They say, I think, why do I do this? And I'm thinking, gee, I do this too. It is a very natural response because the brain evolved not to dispassionately understand reality, but to focus on problems, threats, and dangers. So problems, threats, and dangers are what capture its attention. What's good tends to fall into the background. So we have this bias, and here's some of the consequences. It's easy to acquire a feeling of learned helplessness, which is an important component of depression, from just a few failures, but hard to undo these feelings even with many successes. Research shows that people will do more to avoid a loss than to acquire a comparable gain. Another one, in intimate relationships, it typically takes about 5 positive interactions to overcome the effects of a single negative one. That's from John Gottman, relationship guy. So there is this negativity bias. So it seems to me that an active approach to anxiety would involve inclining the mind away from negativity and activating the parts of the brain which are positive. In addition to the threat system, we have, the affiliative system, which is the most lately developed part of the brain. Our brains are big because we have to interact with each other and form communities, and that requires a lot of brain power. And in the affiliative system, there's compassion, empathy, love, connectedness, and these emotions can be very soothing. So when your threat system is activated, if you can incline the mind more toward these positive interactions, then theoretically, I think, you begin to dampen the anxiety response. And then it becomes possible to feel safe, to relax more, and to become mindful. That's my theory, anyway. That's what I believe I'm seeing with clients. So I want to try this out a little bit. I want to do a little guided. Would you be willing to do a guided meditation? I don't know how long this will take, 5 or 10 minutes. Huh? No tigers. This is a meditation which comes from the Tibetan tradition. It's really a kind of Tibetan form of loving kindness or compassion meditation. And in order to do this, first of all, you need to come up with a few people who are your benefactors in Tibetan language. A benefactor is anyone who you feel has love and compassion toward you. So that can include spiritual beings, the Buddha, Ramakrishna, your teachers, but it also includes friends and family members. It may be people you haven't had perfect relationships with, but who you have felt, at least at some point in their life or your life, that they felt a kind of unconditional compassion and love toward you. It can also include pets. When I do this meditation, I think of Samantha, who was my friend's dog, who every time I saw her, she'd have a seizure. Even if she'd seen me 2 hours ago, she'd be so happy. And I always put her in my meditation. So come up with just a few, one is enough, a few benefactors that you can recall. And we'll do the meditation with that. You can do this with your eyes closed or with your eyes open. If your eyes are open, gaze just kind of at a 45-degree angle just in front of you and keep the focus broad. So begin by just taking a few very deep breaths. And take a long exhalation. The inhalation tends to be energizing. A long exhalation seems to be relaxing. And as you exhale, relax into the body and into the present moment. And sitting in a relaxed way, recall your benefactors and imagine that they're behind you and slightly above your head, arrayed behind you. And they're sending you love in the form of compassion. It's a kind of healing radiance that they're sending into you. It's kind of like a soft rainfall. Receive this loving compassion into any physical pain you might have and any surface tension. Let it penetrate like a warm sunlight, relaxing you, soothing any pain you have. Now, bring to mind some of the worries and anxieties about your daily life that you may have. You might start by thinking of worries over finances, security, or meeting some personal obligations. And just really recall what those anxieties feel like. Let yourself really know and feel what that is in your body. And your benefactors are sending loving kindness, compassion right into the heart of those anxieties, so that you're aware of it, but you're feeling this soft, radiant energy of love going right into it. Be receptive, like a puppy lying on a rug in the sunlight. And as you breathe in that compassion right into the center of this pain. Now bring to mind any anxieties you may have about how others perceive or judge you. Making it real, really recalling how you actually experience these things. And once again, you're not alone with this. It is being seen and witnessed and loved by your benefactors who are sending radiant, loving energy into your anxieties. Bring to mind fears of severe illness, injury, or your fear of dying. Let this be felt and known, and let it be loved just as it is by your benefactors. Bring up any fears you have for loved ones or pets in their vulnerability and mortality. Any anxieties you feel there. And then feel the soft, warm light of compassion coming from your benefactors, falling right into the center of those anxieties. So receive compassion into your deepest patterns of clinging to yourself. And completely surrender to compassion by letting go of the visualization and merging with the energy of compassion itself. Merge with that luminous wholeness beyond separation between self and others. Deeply letting be. Notice any grasping in the body. and let it go. Surrender to the natural power of the body to embody you. Let the breath come into its natural power, breathing all the way in and all the way out. Bathing your body in the natural compassion. And let the mind unfurl and fall completely open, free, all pervasive. Sense the boundless openness of awareness without boundaries. Infinite openness and translucence. Pervasive, open like the sky. And let that meditate you. When you know the suffering in yourself, you can sense it in others. And when you know the place of freedom in yourself, you can uphold that in others. So if your eyes are closed, in a moment I'm going to ask you to open them. But see if you can form the intention to rest in that open, spacious awareness with open eyes so that all your attention doesn't just flow into the room. See if you can have 60% of yourself just in that awareness, and then the rest of you into the room. And then when you're ready, you can open your eyes and come back into the room. I'd be interested, very interested actually, in what that was like for people. Positive, negative.
So first of all, I wanted to thank you in general, and I was thinking before you talked about it, I should mention Buddhist brain to him, which my partner and I are working through. It's been very helpful.
Yeah.
And so it was very helpful. I was able to do it more than I might have expected. So that was my experience.
Good. Thank you. Anybody else?
I like the fact the way you intertwine benefactors, because for me, I didn't feel so alone with this technique, and it just felt like it empowered me to, instead of withdraw, be afraid, or maybe grab some Valium, more of being with that energy. It was very helpful for me.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that. That's kind of the idea. The purpose of the visualization of imagining people who love you is to awaken that compassionate part of yourself. This can be done in metta meditation. It can be done with phrases. May I be happy. May I be peaceful. But a lot of people find it more intense, more real if you imagine a person and do a visualization. I find it that way. And so what that does is it awakens that sense of compassion in you. You know, this is all going on inside us, but it also awakens the sense of connection with others. being soothed by others, which is, one of the big antidotes to anxiety. And that's the idea, is that you incline the mind toward that part of the brain, activate that part of the brain, and the stress response begins to dampen a little bit. That's the idea. It sounds like that worked for you.
And for me, I think having benefactors, especially those who have known me for a while, helps me take me out of the moment of particular specific fear and maybe sense of limitation to, having people who've seen me as beyond that person who's scared of this particular situation. It's like, you're the one who's lived through it all. They've seen me grow. They've seen me happy and celebrate. And so it just kind of reminds me of who the rest of me is.
Yes, that's really good. I think one of the things with anxiety, especially when it becomes chronic, is it's very easy to start to see yourself as weak, damaged, weak essentially. And another one of the benefits of something like this is it begins to incline you toward remembering your strengths, remember the things in you that are loved. Anxiety tends to lead to, and both lead to and come from, self-denigration. When you're feeling stressed, it's very easy to activate the inner critic, and it starts denigrating you, telling you you're wrong. Especially since people try to deal with anxiety typically through self-control. They try to make it go. You try using the front brain to turn off the threat system, which you can't do it. So you get flooded with anxiety, and you start saying, "There's nothing to be scared of. Stop it." If or something like that. If you say that to yourself, what happens? The anxiety goes up because you have joined the enemy. You know what I mean? You're experiencing the world as hostile. You get hostile toward yourself, so you're not even safe in your own skin, right? But this is a typical response, is to get angry and frustrated with ourselves because we're suffering. So that's another thing that this helps to do. You can do a practice like this momentarily during the day when you're stressed. To take a deep breath and just remember somebody who loves you, and imagine them seeing you in your state right now. And the idea is you don't try to get away from the anxiety. That's where the mindfulness comes in here, because you are paying attention to it and sending love into it. So you're not trying to push it away. You're actually opening to it. So it's both a form of mindfulness and compassion meditation at the same time. At least that's the idea.
I just want to piggyback on that last comment. I was, as you were leading the meditation, I was picturing my benefactors being the people in my life who always helped talk me through times of stress and anxiety. And I came to realize they're always right.
They're what?
They're always right. So, in retrospect, I get through something and lo and behold, they were right. I didn't need to be that stressed out, but, they were there. And it helped me quickly move from a present anxiety state to a future state where it's finished and gone and they're right again.
Very good. So you can accept the reassurance when you remember it coming from other people. It makes it stronger. Mm-hmm. I find this true too. Sometimes when I try to reassure myself, it's not such a potent effect. How do I know I'm right? But this person I respect says I don't need to be afraid. And so letting that in makes it stronger. Is that the basic idea? Yeah.
And just based even on past experience, I've always gotten through everything, gotten to the age I am, and, still here, still managing.
Yeah.
And it just kind of put it all in perspective.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you.
So to follow up what Tom said, and also what you were talking about the example with the tiger. So what it reminded me of, a few people may be familiar with this, is type 1 and type 2 errors in statistics. And the problem is that if you reduce one error, it tends to increase the other if you just change the boundary. That is, you become more alert and anxious, for example. So it's helpful for avoiding tigers, but bad for feeling threatened. The other approach is to have a better way of distinguishing, getting a pair of binoculars, to take your example. And so what Tom was talking about, I think, was one way to do that, which was to have respected people that you can check it out. And the other thing that struck me, which tied in with your early discussion about mindfulness, is that if I can become more mindful, not in the general sort of global sense, but of just being aware of what's around, I can probably do a better job of distinguishing bushes with tigers and ones without.
Yeah, sure. I think that is true. What was I going to say about that? I think it becomes easier to become mindful too if there's a baseline of a sense of safety. When you're anxious, when you're on alert, it's very difficult to go into some kind of calm abiding where you see, the whole picture. The focus tends to be on the danger that you're facing. Vision becomes very narrowed, and thinking becomes very preoccupied with, and it goes around in circles. We start to obsess, right? So, and the fear response is mediated by the amygdala. There's two of them back in there. It's the alarm system, and once it turns on, it's kind of hard to turn it off. The more it turns on, the more it tends to turn on. It actually gets physically. They actually get physically bigger. So there's a tendency for anxiety to build on itself, that has to do with what's called neuroplasticity. That the way you use the brain alters its structure. Everything you do slightly alters the structure of your brain. So that if we practice anxiety, we become more anxious, and our trigger for anxiety gets lower and lower. So just anything will set it off. If you spend some time practicing inclining your mind in the other direction with practices like these, theoretically, I think you start to develop other areas of the brain. So that's the brain physiology part of this.
Yeah, thank you. It's really wonderful. I have a long prayer list, but I never think of people praying for me. So this the whole that topic that approach was wonderful. I wonder what you think about. I had a friend in journalism school who was being taught a theory that the reason why in a room full of people you want to talk to, if there's a TV on, you cannot keep from checking out that television. And the theory was that when you're a caveman, if you could see the glint of the fire in a predator's eye out in the dark, that supported your survival. And that our current technology, in fact, throws our minds into hyper-vigilance all the time because it's all these changing little dots. And people who are on computers late at night have such a hard time sleeping. I'm just wondering if you think that
wow,
the way we live our lives technologically is increasing this sense of free-floating anxiety we have.
Well, thank you for that. That's really an interesting idea.
Yeah.
It would explain the midnight sun. You go to the midnight sun to meet people, and you're watching videos instead.
But that, keeping track of the small changing light dots is a survival response. Yeah. That the brain gets captured. Right.
Yeah, and inundated by all this stuff. So that actually, television is supposed to be a soothing and relaxing medium, but it actually isn't. That would help explain why. It's actually there's a slight. Is that true when you watch TV? There's a little.
Depends on what you want.
It depends on what you want.
Well, infants' eyes will automatically deviate to a flickering light.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's it. So the brain goes toward what's problematic or what might be problematic. So you go toward what's moving and what's. Yeah, that makes sense. Awesome.
Tom, thanks for a great talk. I'm glad you mentioned pets, because that's one experience of unconditional love
Yes.
that I received from them and have in the past. In particular, I have one of my dogs. She gets so hyper, and she's so happy to see me, no matter what kind of a day I've had. But just 5 minutes with her is great reassurance for me.
Right.
And I have not been as conscious of the connection between that and the lowering of the anxiety. I do it kind of like on automatic, but I do look forward to her, the interaction with her on a daily basis.
Yeah.
She helps ground me.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons we love dogs and cats so much, is that they help us incline the mind toward the affiliative systems. They awaken compassion. They awaken the sense of being loved and loving, and those are all very soothing emotions. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. So, yeah.
I just wanted to say something, a postscript on the television thing that I just made a connection. I lived overseas for many years, for 15 years in Japan, and I just moved back 3.5 years ago. And when I came back, I recognized that there was going to be a lot of reverse culture shocking coming back. What I found was that television in particular has changed significantly in the time I've been gone. I mean, when I left in '92, we didn't have reality TV shows. Now, I realize that I get really upset when there's a television on because the media is selling us that anxiety.
Yes.
And we're buying it.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So I've made the decision in my life, I don't have a TV. And I'm happy to have my internet connection because I can select from television what I want to watch. But when I'm at someone's house where the television is on, I'm going home next week to visit my father, and I can already feel the anxiety rising because I know that damn television is going to be on, and I'm going to be annoyed by all the stuff they're throwing at me. And it just reminds me, we have a choice on how much that triggers in us, especially since others are profiting from their understanding that they raise our anxiety. And part of us wants, part of us have learned to want that, or to feel that we need it, to stay on top and protect ourselves. I think it is a kind of survival thing that they're tapping into.
I think one of the things I often recommend to clients who are anxious is that they take a media fast. Turn off the television, come home and turn off the television and be quiet. Because all that stimulation is inherently energizing. But the other thing, of course, is that there are powerful forces in this country who want us to be afraid. Because it's, right? I mean, it sells products. It sells all kinds of stuff. Go on Fox News. I'm sorry if anyone. Well, I'm sure this crowd doesn't care. It's about you should be very afraid. There are people who want to destroy you, and impose Sharia law or something like the latest conspiracy theory that's out there. And people who are already stressed and anxious are more susceptible to this kind of stuff and to be feeling afraid. And so it supports a whole kind of politics too. It's really insidious when you think about it. What's going on? Oh, you were next.
Can you help us distinguish between anxiety and depression? I'm not sure I always understand the difference.
Let's see. The problem is that most depressed people have some anxiety, and most anxious people have some depression. You tend to, if you have a diagnosis of one or the other, it's because you're kind of majoring in one, but the other one is in the background. I don't know. I guess I haven't thought of that. Experientially, I experience depression as a kind of lowering of energy, a kind of a immobilization, a down feeling. Anxiety is jumpy. You're impelled to act, to do something. With depression, you're not impelled to act. Maybe other people can define it better than me.
Is like one forward-looking and one backward-looking, or anticipatory versus regretful, or?
Let's see. Well, that's good. People who are depressed are often focusing on their sins, their character deficiencies, the things they've done wrong, the ways they've failed. Anxiety tends to be focusing on the next awful thing that's going to happen. So that's a good. Yeah, I think that probably is true. Depression looks more backward. It's interesting. I've never really thought of. I know what they feel like from my own experience, but I haven't really thought of defining them. Does that help at all?
Yeah, thank you.
Who's next? Okay, go ahead.
I like the positioning of the benefactors behind and above. If you think about like where the threats were for mammals early on, but also, I mean, it's just out there in the street culture of, I've got your back, or who's got my back.
Yes.
I mean, we are social. We are social, and our safety system derives out of our social connections, which is a big issue, for many of us that are single. Like where is our protection coming from?
Very good. Yeah, I had this thought just the other day. I was asking myself, why do the Tibetans put the benefactors back here? I mean, that's a really important part of the meditation for them. Why here? And I think that's what it is. They have your back. When you're anxious, it's behind you that's dangerous, what you can't see. So if the safety is coming from behind, it just makes a lot of sense.
You said the man with the red shirt, I think was that.
Whose name? Okay.
You want to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you if you could talk a little bit about what's been found to be effective about combining exercise with meditation. It's clear that they both help. But exercise.
Oh, yeah.
Exercise and meditation. The pacing and the rhythm and, what works.
Mm-hmm.
Using the two in tandem.
Well, they're both important. I mean, one of the most important things for anxiety, as well as depression, is aerobic exercise. I personally find if I'm really anxious, the order of things that works best for me is some aerobic, if I have time for this, aerobic exercise to work up a sweat, some yoga postures to stretch, a hot bath, and then I meditate. Because, so I don't know, other people have their own, but that's when the trouble is, the self-care takes so much time, and most of us are working so hard. I mean, we don't have time for all this, but that's what my ideal is. The thing is, what happens when you get anxious is you're flooded. You really are flooded with stress hormones and adrenaline, and the floodwaters have to recede. And that's what you have to have patience and compassion for that process of letting things recede. We tend so often to forget that we're embodied beings, that these are brains in action here. And people get mad, stop it, or they go to a shortcut like having a drink, or drugs or something. Instead of kind of working with the anxiety to calm down. I think aerobic exercise is really important for all the stress we have. I don't know which more.
And yoga would not be part of that.
Oh, well, yoga isn't, I don't see it, it depends on what kind you do. If you do hot yoga or some vinyasa, some really vigorous yoga, you work up, it's both. The kind of yoga I do is yoga for old guys, which is a lot more, and it's just about stretching and relaxing the body. So I separate it from aerobic exercise because that's where I'm at my stage in life. But I find them both helpful because when you're anxious, your body's tensing, and then yoga is about deliberately untensing. So Tai Chi too is useful, and Qigong.
So one more thought. The perspective on what emotion is, as I understand it, is a combination of body sensations and thoughts. So anxiety is an emotion, I believe, as is depression. So the various things we're talking about are either dealing with calming the thought patterns or calming the body stuff that is part of it. So that's how the yoga and the exercise and the other things all have a certain commonality in what they're doing from that Tibetan perspective on emotions.
Yeah, and this meditation works on both the thinking and the bodily stuff. I mean, I think it's a good combination of both. We got to stop in a minute. I want to.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I just want to make a couple of things. In terms of resources, this book is really good. Buddha's Brain. He has a lot of meditative exercises for actively changing mental states, and he shows how they're grounded in the physiology of the brain. This is Rick Hansen, and he's also come out with CDs. How about this one? Stress Proof Your Brain. It's a little oversold, but actually I've been giving it to people, and it works. The meditations in this, there's a number of them which are about activating feeling strong, activating feeling connected, feeling compassionate, taking in the good, practices for inclining the mind away from stress and anxiety.
That's the same man who's authored the book?
Yeah, well, the co-author, Rick Hansen. I'll leave him out if people want to look at him. And the other one, the meditation we did today is based on this Tibetan practice, which, and you can get a CD called Awakening Through Love by John McCransky. You can give you the name. And he does smaller versions of this meditation, which I have found the most effective with my anxious patients. So, and the other thing is, I write a column called The Examined Life, which is in the Bay Times every other week, and the last column and the next one are going to be focused on this stuff around anxiety. But a lot of people don't know. They either don't know I write it, or they think it's in the BAR. One says, "I love your column in the BAR." It's never been in the BAR. So what I've been doing is sending it to people. So I put out a mailing thing out there. If you want to get the column, just put your name and email address down. You'll get a column every other week until you tell me to stop. And I don't send advertisements or any other. That you just get the column. So if you want it. Okay, those are the end of my announcements. Thank you all.
Thank you, Tom. Will you hang around for a bit?
Oh, yeah.
Our social hour?
Sure.
Great. Thank you. How about announcements? Any announcements this morning?
I'm the host, so please stay for there are freshly baked scones and tea. And if you have some tea, please clean your cup. There's a Dana Bowl I will be bringing around, and we ask for a contribution of $5 to $8 to help support the Sangha. People go to lunch at 12:30, so if you would like to go to lunch with people, hang out near the front door around 12:30 when we're shooing people out. And there's a mailing list if you'd like, if you're new and would like to receive the newsletter either via email or in the old-fashioned way. I think that's all the announcements.
George? Just a reminder that our talks are available on the internet at the GBF website, Buddhist.org, and I'll get this one up as soon as I can.
You, George, thank you.
Jim?
Yes, next week, Jennifer Berzon, lovely present. She brings wonderful music and luminous Dharma commentary, and it's always a wonderful session. Also, today we're going to do our annual fundraising letter mailing out here. There are no prisoners. There's no organ stuff. It's just straightforward stuff. Label and stamp. So I would appreciate help. Thank you.
The other thing that happens today that's a little bit unusual schedule-wise is during our social hour, which is about to begin in the other room, if anyone would like to hang around in this room and talk about their meditation practice, we'll either do a small group or I'll just hang out if anybody wants to talk about their meditation practice. Available for that in here. Yes.
I just wondered if you might ask who might be going to the Spirit Rock Gay Lesbian Retreat. We can't talk there, but we could maybe see each other at the end of it.
Has anybody signed up? I think Carl might be too. He's not here today.
Yeah, I'd like to just acknowledge that we have a new GBF directory out there. Bill Hurley and Marvin Snow have put it together, so feel free to take a copy of that. And the other thing is I had a message, I didn't get to talk to him, but I had a phone message from Harv Witten this week, and he sounds very well. He's living with his friend Bob in Pennsylvania. He's not in a facility. And he had his usual, enthusiasm and expressions, and he sounded very well. So just reporting that.
Any other announcements? Okay, let's gather in a circle. Tom, would you like to do Merit, or would you like me to?
Why don't you do it?
Okay. So as we come together this morning, let's dedicate the merit of our practice to all beings that aren't here with us this morning. And let's dedicate our merit to our benefactors. Those people and animals, dead or alive, with us or not, who support us, love us, stand behind us. Merit to our benefactors, may all beings have all the benefactors they could use. It's a great talk.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.